Now, the Scottish Greens have launched their manifesto promising transformative action for people and planet. Joining me now is the co-leader of the Scottish Greens, Lorna Slater. Very good morning to you. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning. It's an exciting morning.
We've got a little bit of a delay there, so we're glad I just tested that. But thanks so much for joining us. And give us your opening gambit, if you can, briefly. Why should people vote for the Scottish Greens?
People should vote for the Scottish Greens because we only have 5 years left, as the UN Secretary-General says, to avoid the road to climate hell. And that means making that significant investment to transition to net zero, but at the same time, investing in our public services. What the Scottish Greens are boldly talking about is how we raise that revenue by taxing the very wealthiest and the fossil fuel giants.
So, I guess it's clear from the manifesto and from your colleagues in the South that you want to deliver on those pledges with a lot of spending. It will cost a lot of money. I guess the headline, therefore, is you're willing, therefore, to put up taxes significantly to pay for it?
That's exactly right. There is a conspiracy of silence amongst the other political parties about what both the transition to net zero is actually going to cost and what it's going to cost to get our public services back up to snuff after 14 years of Tory austerity. And that does mean taxing the rich. The Scottish Greens are proposing a wealth tax on the wealthiest 1%. So that's people with more than £3.4 million in assets. 1% of their wealth, ramping up to 10% for the absolute wealthiest fraction, could raise £70 billion for our public services and to support that transition to a low-carbon economy.
Your manifesto has £162 billion of incremental spending promises. That compares to 5 for Labour, 13 for the Conservatives. So it's sort of off the charts in terms of incremental spending promises. It doesn't even include an extra 90 billion of capital investments. So I just there's some tax plans there which may or may not deliver the numbers you're suggesting that you outline. But either way, this is a manifesto that will take the overall tax burden, whoever's shoulders it falls onto, to a level that is far, far beyond where it's ever reached before.
The last 14 years have seen the extremely wealthy double and triple their wealth, whilst the poorest are suffering because of austerity politics. It is only right that the fossil fuel giants and big polluters, people who use private jets, people who have the broadest shoulders, contribute the money that is going to be needed to change our economy and to prevent the climate crisis. Other political parties are being straight up dishonest about what that's going to cost and what that's going to mean. It does mean that the very wealthiest, who are the people who are causing the most pollution through use of private jets, the fossil fuel companies who are contributing to that problem that affects us all, it is absolutely right that they spend some fraction of their billions to set it right, and at the same time put our public services on the right path. We're absolutely not shy about that, and it is what we need to do to build that fairer and more equal society.
That being said, overall, are you happy that you're taking the tax burden to a totally unprecedented level?
The phrase tax burden is such an odd one. It's a tax contribution. We know that if we want an NHS, if we want bus services, if we want excellent teacher-to-student ratios, that we have to pay for it. We can't pretend we can have all these great things without paying for it. And making sure that the wealthiest who, a 1% tax on people with more than £3.4 million of assets, they will hardly notice that's missing. But we do notice when we can't get an appointment with our GP, when we have to wait months for a vital surgery. We do notice these things. So don't let the other parties delude you with small change. fixing our economy, fixing our public services, and transitioning to net zero is going to cost, is going to require investment. And it's perfectly reasonable that the tax contribution of the wealthiest be increased.
That might be the case, but either way, taxes on the wealthy or oil companies will not add up to the extra 162 billion of spending promises and 90 billion of capital investment. But we just need to move on as well. I wanted to ask you about the tactics employed by Just Stop Oil. We've seen them target in recent days quite a different set of targets, from private jets to national monuments like Stonehenge. Do you think they've taken things too far?
I, of course, sympathise with the emotion and distress of climate protesters who feel that they are being ignored, that the urgent action that we need to upgrade our public transport, to get people out of cars, to change our aviation sector, and to make sure that we have that investment in clean, green industry is being ignored by government. So I absolutely understand their frustrations about that. It's interesting to me that I get asked constantly about the actions of climate protesters and never about the actions of fossil fuel companies who are causing this problem in the first place while raking in billions.
We are out of time. Lorna Slater, thanks so much for joining us.